Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I do want to speak about Barcelona's defense, because now knowing that we have finished this season, we have won La Liga, the Spanish Super Cup, and the Copa del Rey, with only 2 matches being left, right? We have the one against Villarreal on Sunday, and then we have another one in the following Sunday on the 25th of May against Athletic Club to finish off this whole season. And hopefully we get to see like youngsters come in through these last 2 matches, so we can really have an idea on who's coming up next. For example, Tony Fernandez, Gulli Fernandez, Noah Darvish, just like how Lamine Yamal featured in those last 3 to 4 matches in the 2022-2023 season. So a lot of things to look forward to. But knowing that we have finished everything, now I can be critical. Now I can talk about what I truly believe about this Barcelona side. And I want to be very, I would just say, strict on this analysis. And that's mainly because, once again, the season is over, and it made no sense for me to talk about this in the middle of the season. You know, like being in the middle of competing for all of these competitions, it just wouldn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to make noise in the middle of the season, right? These players just do not need that. But with the season now finally wrapped up, I want to talk about the defense, because that has probably been one of the most important things for us this season. We have scored, right, so many goals over the past 45 matches, but we have allowed a lot. It's like saying, okay, can you imagine, like, you're Conor McGregor and you're facing Floyd Mayweather, right? And you fight against Floyd Mayweather and you hit him so hard in the eye, but then he punches you back straight into the ribs and you're bleeding. It's like that, right? And then you punch him again on the neck, and then he punches you again in the chin, and it makes you dizzy, right? It is not sustainable in the long run, because eventually these opponents will realize that you have great weaknesses, and they're only going to continue to pound on those weaknesses that you do carry on you, and that is no defensive work, right? And that ultimately allows you, like, potentially getting knocked out, like literally getting knocked out in a MMA fight or a boxing fight, or in football, for example, like what happened against Inter Milan. So let's talk about that, right? I want to get one thing very clear, right? And I do think that in terms of our defensive game this season, it has been worse if you were to compare it to the ones of Xavi Hernandez and his 2 full seasons with FC Barcelona, which was the 2022-2023 season and the 2023-2024 season, right? And I'm going to be explaining why I am saying this. Now, does it mean that overall was Hansi Flick's Barcelona worse than Xavi Hernandez's teams? No. We were better, much better. I'm just saying, in terms of our defensive game, Hansi Flick's Barcelona was worse. Once again, I'll be explaining why. So, in this season, in the first 25 matches that we have played, we have conceded 29 goals, which is really not a lot. That's like what, like 1 goal every 90 minutes that we have conceded in the first 25 matches. And keep in mind, this data that I am collecting here, these first 25 matches, it is from the first game of the season all the way up until where we lost against Atletico Madrid just before the year ended, right? So it is those group of matches. And then after that match against Atletico Madrid, where we lost, I believe it was 2-1, that is where I'm going to collect the other 33 matches. So from January all the way up until the last match where we have played against it was against Espanyol, which was a total of 33 matches, and we have conceded 40 goals, right? We have conceded 40 goals in those 33 matches, which was the second half of the season. That is how I'm basically breaking up the season so far, is the first half of the season and the second half of the season. The second half of the season to me is considered in January, right? The first game in January. And so from January up until today, 33 matches, and we have conceded 40 goals. In the first half, we've only conceded 29 goals in 25 matches. Now, here's the thing. I really do think that the reason why we have conceded more goals in the second half than we did in the first half is because when we first came out with our brand of football under Hansi, it took a lot of teams to realize what was going on, and a lot of analysis, right? Like, all of these other teams had to see, okay, what did the other team do? Why were they conceding so much? How can we score against this FC Barcelona team? Because this brand of football was so new. Madrid could not figure it out. Atletico Madrid could not figure it out. I mean, like, you know, they did in the last game of the year, but overall, Teams like Valencia could not figure it out, or Athletic Club, or any other team. They could not figure out how to tackle this brand new brand of football that Hansi Flick did introduce. And that's why we scored so many goals against them, and they couldn't score against us, because this high line, this offside trap was something so brand new to La Liga, and in the Champions League, it was frustrating to them. Hence the reason why defensively, we were better in the first half compared to the second half, because by the time we got into the second half of the season, a lot of these teams, they started to realize, oh, okay, we know what they do. We have seen enough games. We have enough data on how this Barcelona team like to attack and how they like to defend. And so they had better plans and better, I would just say, analysis on how to tackle this Barcelona team. Hence the reason why we have conceded more is because they thought about us much better, right? They had more time to think about how could they tackle FC Barcelona. And so was it enough, right, for these teams to collect all this data to defeat us? No, because Barcelona still persevered. They said, okay, you're going to score more against us compared to how we did in the first half of the season, but we'll score even more. If you score 4, we'll score 5. If you score 3, we'll score 4. That was the whole attitude of Hansi Flick's Barcelona. Now, once again, what did I say in the beginning of this video? If you punch somebody in the eye in a boxing match and you hit them so well, you're like, God damn, I hit this guy in the eye. God damn, I hit this guy in the chin so well. But if he hits you back in the ribs, you're going to get hurt. And it's going to bite you back in the long run. If you let this player punch you in the chest, in the arms, in the legs, in the calf, in the lungs, in the kidneys, it's going to eventually catch up to you. And that is what we saw in this season. It eventually catched up to FC Barcelona, and unfortunately, this is what led towards us failing against Inter Milan. So ultimately, right, even though we have won 3 trophies this season, it could have been much better. And that much better part should have been in our defensive game. Even Hansi Flick stated after we won La Liga, which was yesterday, he stated, oh yeah, we did good, but we could improve on top of this. We could do things much better, and I do think that we can get much better. So all in all, in terms of right now on May 16th 2025, because we still have 2 matches left to play, we have adopted this ultra offensive style with a high defensive line. We have scored 97 goals in La Liga, which is insane. And we could potentially reach 100 plus goals by the end of these last 2 matches. We have won the league title early, but we have conceded 69 goals in all competitions, right? In all competitions. When you add in the Spanish Super Cup, La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Champions League, 69 goals were conceded. This shows defensive fragility, right? And I think that is not just mainly because of the individual errors. I know that a lot of us are going to say, oh yeah, no, Kevin, it's because of individual errors. No, I do think that it's much more of a system problem than a individual problem, right? 69 goals conceded in all competitive competitions. That's something that can be improved. It can be much better. And so I want to compare this to how Xavi Hernandez had his last 2 seasons defensively, because look, in the 2023-2024 season, which was last season, we scored 79 goals. Already you can just tell in La Liga, right? This is for La Liga specifically. 79 goals that we have scored already. You can tell that we have improved offensively by a lot, right? Hence the reason why I say that this Hansi Flick team is better than most of the teams that we have displayed in the past 6 years, I would say. But look, 79 goals that we have scored, but we have conceded only 44 goals in the 2023-2024 season, right? For La Liga, only 44. That is on average of 1.16 goals conceded per 90 minutes, right? We have conceded 14 goals in the Champions League. We have conceded 5 goals in the Copa del Rey, 4 goals in the Super Cup, and all in all, we have conceded 67 total goals in the 2023-2024 season, which is 2 less than what Hansi Flick has this season. So there is an improvement defensively from last season. Now, if you go to the 2022-2023 season, which was Xavi Hernandez's best defensive display and was like unheard of, we have scored 70 goals, which is less, okay, less goals than Hansi Flick's Barcelona and Xavi Hernandez's second full season. And this is for La Liga, right? 2022-2023 season, we have scored 70 goals, but conceded only 20 goals in La Liga. Can you guys like really think about that, right? 20 goals in La Liga. That is on average of allowing 0.53 goals per 90 minutes in La Liga. That is insane. And in the Champions League, we have conceded 12 goals, which is like 2 goals per 90 minutes. Is not really good. And then 7 goals in the Copa del Rey, 5 goals in the Super Cup, which is like 2.5 goals conceded per 90 minutes. Also not really good. But the league standing, right, 20 goals conceded, that is insanity. And all in all, we have only Xavi Hernandez's Barcelona in his first full season, they have only conceded 48 goals compared to Hansi Flick's right now 69 goals conceded in all competitions. And with Xavi Hernandez, he has conceded 48 goals in all competitive competitions. That defensive performance is something that it is unheard of and is so hard to replicate. And especially, right, if we try to aim for those type of numbers next season, it's really hard to do that because we're going to be displaying our high defensive line. So something to think about, because I don't even know if Hansi Flick has interest in trying to improve this metric in terms of our defense. But I do think that look, I don't expect for Hansi Flick's Barcelona to concede less than 48 goals in all competitive competitions, because that's really hard to do, because Xavi Hernandez's team was conservative. It was very, I would just say, more defensively aware. And we did not produce a high line under Xavi Hernandez's Barcelona. And when we did, we got clapped. We got destroyed. Like, for example, in that, I believe it was the Spanish Super Cup Spanish Super Cup final back in 2024, where we had Jules Koundé and Araujo at the back, and we just got dismantled by Vinicius and Rodrigo and Bellingham. It wasn't pretty. So Xavi Hernandez could not deal with a high line, and Hansi Flick could, because obviously he's like, okay, we're gonna do a high line, we're gonna concede less, but we're also gonna score a lot more goals. So in terms of like that high risk, high reward football, Hansi Flick is much better, and obviously it pays dividends to this Barcelona team with 3 total trophies, scored more goals than ever, beating teams like Bayern, Madrid, and other teams, Benfica. It was amazing. But let me tell you, it's going to be really hard for Hansi Flick to really try to improve on what Xavi Hernandez's Barcelona did back in the 2022-2023 season. It's impossible. I feel like it's just impossible. But if we can get close to that and maybe replicate what Xavi brought to his second full season, which is 67 goals conceded in all competitions, that would be really good. Maybe try to aim for 60 goals conceded in all competitive competitions next season, and that would be a great improvement. Now, what led towards us conceding a lot of goals, right? Like, what? Let's get more specific. Why in this season under Hansi Flick have we conceded a lot? And I do think that point number 1, it has to go with the high defensive line exposure, right? The opponents exploited the space between the defenders with through balls over and over again. We had a lot of goalkeeper, I would just say, indecisions, where there was a lot of hesitations at the back. Like, for example, I don't know if you guys remembered when Szczesny and Balde hit each other really hard because they were not communicating, right? There was no communication at the back. And I think that got a lot better because we started to see Szczesny act much more as a number 1 sweeper, right? Every time the ball was going to the back and there was like a through ball, and one of the strikers of the opposition was going on a 1v1 versus the goalkeeper, sometimes we saw Alejandro Balde or Jules Koundé try to track back. But ultimately, that got cleaned up by Hansi, and he said, okay, if that ever happens again, Szczesny, you just have to go out. Nobody else touches it. So Szczesny went out. That part got fixed, but sometimes there was like that type of miscommunications, especially when you had to defend in those set pieces. And sometimes we had to question whether it was the goalkeeper to get it or the center back to get it. But yeah, point number 2, transitional defense weakness. For example, we had the left side of the pitch of Barcelona's defense completely wide open, and I believe that, you know, with Alejandro Balde going so high up the pitch, it left so much space open, bro. Like, the amount of times we saw these opponents like put those through balls or those long balls in the air going over our left flank, it was successful for the opponents, and Barcelona suffered a lot. 62% of open play goals were conceded via left side, which is because of Alejandro Balde, and 19 counterattack goals conceded, which ultimately led towards 53% of all league goals. So that is also another weakness. And going back to the set pieces, I believe that is also going to be the third point: set piece vulnerability. It is something that we have really conceded a lot in the second half of the season. It's a late season drop off. Only three set piece goals conceded in La Liga, right? But the issues did grow in key matches, right? When we had those Copa del Rey finals or the Spanish Super Cup or those Champions League matches where it became knockout rounds, we really did, I would say, concede a lot of goals in set pieces in the second half of the season. For example, against Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey final, Dortmund in the Champions League, those corner kicks broke us down a lot. And that's a huge concern, right? Inter Milan's threat from corners, it wasn't also another major concern, and we have to fix that. Like going into this summer, we have to really try to realize, the set pieces, the corner kicks, those long balls into the box when we fouled a player from outside of our own box, or if there was ever a free kick, we have to defend those much better. We have to defend those left side spaces much better. Our high defensive line, we have to be much more focused than ever before, so those through balls don't end up being successful. And Mbappe can't, we have to stop Mbappe or Vini or Haaland or Musiala in the future from attacking those open spaces behind our defensive line. Those have been our weaknesses, and that ultimately led towards us conceding a lot of goals this season, and especially in the second half of the season. Going back to what I said in the beginning, we've conceded more goals in the second half compared to the first half, and that's because a lot of these teams started to understand what made this Barcelona team so dangerous, but they also saw the weaknesses. So to wrap things around, point number 1, high defensive line exposure. Point number 2, transitional defensive weakness because of Alejandro Balde going up, which left a lot of space. And point number 3, set piece vulnerability. If I were to be a little more nitpicky, because I did notice some other errors within the key points that I have just put out, I want to go underneath that and get just a little more specific. Barcelona's counter-pressing success rate was 68%, which is something that I would say is average. It could be improved. I believe that their counter-pressing success rate could be at like a 70 or 75. And ultimately, because of this counter-pressing success rate, and because we counter-press so much after we do lose the ball, we leave so much space behind our midfield line and our defensive line. And the main reason why that happens is because our midfield has pushed 7.2 meters higher versus the top teams in Europe this season, and even in Spain, leading to these vertical spaces. Ultimately, 14 goals conceded after failing to press extremely high in those phases, and mostly in La Liga. We have conceded a lot because we failed in those pressing movements. And because of our position and our midfield being so much higher than most of the teams, we conceded a lot. Another point that I want to make, right, that is very, I would just say, very specific and being very nitpicky: wide area and aerial deficiencies, right? Balde averaging 15 meters higher than Jules Koundé, it did create a imbalance. And these opponents targeted the left flank much more, which was like 41% of our attacks came from that side. And we also have to call out that 8 goals have been conceded from low crosses and into the left channel. They all came from there, right? And that is once again because of Alejandro Balde's absence. There has been a poor aerial duel success rate of 57% in wide zones, leading to 7 goals from second balls, right? So it's insane. And I do think that if there's another thing that has to be nitpicked, is our defensive substitutions impact. For example, I think that Hansi Flick does very well in terms of, okay, we need to score more goals in the last 25 to 30 minutes. Let's bring in Fermin Lopez. Let's bring in Ferran Torres. Maybe sub in Lewandowski. Maybe sub in Pablo Torre. Maybe let's put in Alejandro Balde for Gerard Martin. He's really good at that. But in terms of like subbing in players to improve our defense in the second half or in the last 25 minutes, we're not that good at that, right? We need to learn how to protect our lead, something that was really good under Xavi Hernandez's Barcelona. We protected our lead very well. And I would say that Hansi Flick's, in terms of like the defensive game, when making substitutions, it was partially effective, but it was not transformative. Like, for example, when we needed to defend our 4-3 lead against Inter Milan, first of all, our attitude was not correct. Our attitude should have been, we should defend our lead, which means that we have to maintain the ball and let Inter Milan suffer. Let them suffer. Try to get the ball against us. Let's retain the ball and let's relax, right? Let's put in our defensive substitutions. If we ever do lose the ball while we're trying to retain the ball, we can recoup that ball as fast as possible. That should have been our attitude in the 4-3, but no. What ended up happening was we put in more attacking players and we said, let's make it 5-3. Let's score more goals. Let's make it 6-3. Who cares if we lose the ball? It's fine. Let's do it more. But no, we got punished and Inter Milan scored and made it 4-4. And we had to go through extra time and ultimately we got knocked out of the Champions League. So sometimes we just have to know when we have to calm things down. Something that was very well done by Xavi Hernandez. Obviously, he did not have the answers towards scoring goals in the first place, like in the first half or second half. But I believe that if you have a good balance between these two philosophies of Hansi Flick's attack and Xavi Hernandez's conservatism, right? You can win a lot. And we need that because that should have been our approach in the last 10 to 15 minutes against Inter Milan. We needed a better defensive substitution impact and we needed to be more conservative. But we were not like that. Our attitude was not like that. Another thing that I want to talk about is I know that it's very sexy for us to come back by 4 goals or come back from a 2-0 lead. We did that like 4 to 5 times, coming back from coming back up from a 2-0 deficit. It is insane, and that is something that has to be respected. But at the end of the day, we should not be in those predicaments in the first place. Like for example, we have conceded early in before the 5th minute like 4 to 5 times, which is like unheard of. I don't know why these things even have to take place. I do think that I would hope that for Hansi Flick these type of things bother him, because it bothers me. Back on December 15th 2024 against Leganés, not against Bayern, not against Real Madrid, not against Manchester City, not against one of the best teams in the world, but against Leganés, Sergio Gonzalez scored against us on the 4th minute from a corner, very early. Poor set piece marking and no comeback. It was ugly. February 25th 2025, Atletico Madrid scored very early, conceding on the 1st minute with Julian Alvarez. Direct vertical play. It was ugly. Also conceded again on the 6th minute. It was early chaos, very ugly. Obviously, it ended up on a 4-4 draw, and we came back on a 2-0 deficit, right, by coming back 3-2. And everybody was like, oh my God, like, this is amazing. We came back 4-2 on that exact same game. But those type of things do not need to happen, dude. We conceded 2 goals within a span of 6 minutes. And we conceded 1 goal in a span of 45 seconds. May 6, 2025 versus Inter Milan. What happened? We conceded on the 1st minute again. Against Real Madrid on May 11th, 2025, Mbappe scored a goal against us on the 5th minute. Where Szczesny made, obviously he hit Mbappe. They scored a penalty against us on the 5th minute. It was ugly. Chaos from the very first 8 minutes. It is insane. So it was chaos against Madrid, chaos against Inter, chaos against Atletico Madrid, chaos against Leganés, and these things need to be minimized. I understand that sometimes maybe these things may not be in our control, but obviously it's just we have to think about these things because I do not want to see these type of things going into the next season. We can improve. This chaos ultimately leads towards us going down 2-0, and we have to come back 3-2. We have to come back 4-2. I'd rather just go into matches and score 3 to 4 goals in the first 45 minutes, and that's it, done. Destroy these teams from the very beginning. Yeah, that's basically it, right? Like, in terms of, like, do I want to make this? Do I want to talk about this in this video, or should I just make this in a separate video? I'll partially talk about this now that since we're already here. I know, so we made a lot of defensive mistakes. Defensively, we have not been at our best, which leads towards one question. What center back could improve us in our back line? What center back out there in Europe can complement our problematic defense at the back? And I do think that in terms of what type of profile we need from our brand new center back that we might get in this summer, he has to be a top end recovery pace merchant, right? You must be fast. Another priority that you must have is be excellent when having off the ball positioning duties. You need to be excellent on that and be vocal in terms of organization. Point number 3, be dominant in the aerial game. Like, you have to be tall. You have to win those aerial duels. That would be a huge compliment. We need that. Point number 4, be comfortable in sweeping into wide zones. Point number 5, of course, you have to be a great progressive passer. And point number 6, you have to be two-footed. That is a lot when it comes to trying to ask for a brand new center back and what you need to have, right? Obviously, at least have 3 to 4 from these attributes that I have just named. If you have those 3 to 4 attributes, you'll be fine, and you qualify to become one of our next great center backs. And so, all in all, I think that somebody like Jonathan Tah can give us that. He can give us the recovery speed, the discipline. He's good in terms of off the ball positioning. His aerial duels is also amazing. We talked about that before. Better aerial duel success rate than Ronald Araujo, and has great composure in terms of distributing passes from the back. Now, unfortunately, Jonathan Tah is much closer on joining Bayern Munich and not FC Barcelona. So we're going to be losing on yet again another center back that we could have signed. You know, there is other alternatives like Gonçalo, I believe that's his name, Gonçalo Inácio from Sporting, who is very tall. He's like 6'1", 45 million euro release clause, really good in diagonal balls, extremely fast. He complements a player like Kubarsi. Another player that I would name is Leny Yoro from Manchester United. He's only 19 years old, so he's young. This will be very high risk, high reward type of signing, but he's really good and he's really tall, 6'3" in height, great aerial duel success rate. He's a sprinter, explosive sprinter. And so I'm not going to go too into detail about these 2 other center backs besides Jonathan Tah, but yeah, that's basically it. That is also going to be the conclusion without making this video like freaking 30 minutes long. I'm sorry guys if this ended up being more than 20 plus minutes. I tried going for a 15-minute video or 12-minute video, but it's just too long, bro. Like I don't know how to control myself, but it is what it is. Conclusion: Barcelona's high risk aggressive system brought offensive success, but defensive instability. We need more highline organization, a better pressing structure, better defensive transitions, and our set piece defending needs to improve. And so that is it. That is going to be wrapping up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.